Hello and welcome to another edition of Tournament Poker Project. My name's John.
And I'm Tain.
And we are two recreational players, and this is very near the beginning of our journey to get good enough at poker to go and play in the World Series of Poker. My current bankroll is, well, I've got two. I've got an online one of about £113, and currently my live earnings are minus £90. So I've got an imaginary baseline of minus 3,000 that I'm willing to go down to over the course of a few years. I hope I start going back up, but starting at zero gives us a good kind of gauge of where we're at. I'm hoping that even if it does go down for a bit, it'll go back up over the zero mark. And then once we get to about 20 grand, we're ready for Vegas, right, Tain? What's your bankroll?
Bankrolls. So I was at £270 live. That's down to a tasty 190 after quite an unsuccessful rebuy game the other night. My online hasn't moved much. I think it's around about £100 now. It was 108, but I lost this tournament as well as a few others, and I tried to practice at cash very badly. I'm not good at cash. even if I'm just trying to use it to practice, I just can't do it.
Let's stick to our tournaments. That's what it's all about. Well, that's the fun anyway. So look, just for our listeners, look, me and Tain, we're not professionals. We're two chaps from Essex that like to play poker and are starting to study it. We've got a lot to learn, but we hope what we do talk about has some benefit to us in our learning journey, but also you guys as listeners. So let's jump straight in. Tain, do you want to talk us through a hand?
Yeah, so this is really early on in the sit and go tournament. I didn't do very well at this tournament. I went out quite early, but I think I went out when I had the best of it, if I remember rightly, but that's irrelevant. Where we're at the moment is we're still on the 10 and 20. We've all got 2,000 stacks, so we are.
So sorry, just before we jump into that, how many runners in the tournament do we know?
Oh, my bad. Yeah, so it's there is 9. It's a 9-handed sit and go. It's only $3. I think it was a turbo. Get it overdone with, fairly low stakes. No one's out yet. No one's actually made any moves yet. As the person on the big blinds, slight bit up, 500 chips up, quarter of their stack, but pretty much everyone else is sitting around where they started. No one's got anything to be worried about. The antes are 2, and the blinds are 20 and 10. So the pot is 48 to start with, which puts everyone's at 30, 40. It's massive. Yeah, I mean, so we're playing fun times at the moment.
Yeah, green zone poker. Let's go.
Oh, and I'm sitting on the button, so I'm going to be playing my position to death in this one. I'm dealt monster 3-7 of diamonds. So obviously you can imagine I'm probably all in this hand. It's a fantastic starting hand.
If you don't go all in, maybe we could discuss some other options.
See where we're at.
Other than the really obvious all in with 7-3 of diamonds.
Brilliant.
Okay. All right then. So what happens? Who have we got?
Okay, so there is a call under the gun. My first instinct is call's a bit weak. 20's really low though. I think you see people do that with a really wide range, especially at the lower stakes where people kind of just want to see every hand and then do fit and fold. So for me, that call is with almost anything. And then we've got fold around to my monster. And as you can imagine, and to be fair, this is probably a leak, but if I see someone open call, especially under the gun, I'm pretty much raising that on the button no matter what. This could be 7-2 off. I kind of really want to punish that under the gun, but because there've been an under the gun call, I feel that the big blind is a lot less likely to defend. It kind of gives you, it's almost like a sort of squeeze. It is a squeeze, but it isn't, because the big blind and the call are kind of almost involuntary in the squeeze play. But I feel that it works well enough a lot of the time. The small blind folds, big blind folds. So, completely skipped past. I raised it to 80. So I've raised it 4 times to big blinds. And again, that's a real standard raise. That is 3 times to big blind plus an extra one because there's been a caller. I probably should be raising that, or so maybe 5 times to big blind to give them credit for being under the gun. But at the same time, if you're open calling, I don't think it's necessary. If the 80 is going to do what I needed it to, which it did, which means I'm now heads up. And
But
then
yeah,
we've got.
I like the raise here. I think maybe it's slightly small, but it's fine. You've got the position being on the button, so after the flop, you're going to have position, which is one of the 3. You'd be the last aggressor pre-flop. Usually, you've got 2 of the 3, and who knows, you might even get a little bit of range advantage when the flop comes down. So, really, really like the raise here.
Yeah, I mean, you did say it's a bit small, and that has given me a little pause where we could possibly say, is actually that a bit telling? Have I subconsciously only raised it to 80 when I'd normally feel pretty comfy doing that to 100, 120 because I am playing 7-3? Could be a little tell there, and that could be something that a good player can pick up on. But we'll see what happens. We get a call from the under the gun, so they've called the 20, and then they've not seen the raise as much of a threat, so they've called it again. I'd still put them on a real big, quite a wide range at this point. I do think that would have been.
So just to be clear, so the small blinds folded, the big blinds folded, and then the original limper, which is the under the gun position, has just called your 80. Yeah,
that's right. So yeah, the pot is now 208. I am eliminating. They have capped their range with that call, so I'm eliminating the worst of their range. Not much of the worst of the range, but I am eliminating some. If they would actually call in with some dreadful hands, like 10-7 off, I think we're going to get rid of some of them with the raise. But it's definitely getting rid of any part of their top range as well. I don't think anyone, even especially at this level, is just flat, just calling and then calling a raise with aces, kings, ace, king suited. Probably most strong aces, in fact, I'd say. And that might be a bit unfair to the lower stakes, but I would say most players at the lower stakes enjoy a good, strong suited ace, even if it is just ace to 10. So yeah, but all the same, that's where I'm putting them at. Let's see what happens. We'll get on to the flop. Ka-ching, 208 in the pot. And then we have ace of diamonds, ace of clubs, 5 of hearts. So rainbow, 2 aces to the balls.
So what's your first thoughts here as in terms of, if obviously we know what we've got 7-3 of diamonds. What do we think that the under the gun, the villain here, thinks of this flop, in terms of if he's thinking about what cards we might have and what our range is as the raiser on the button? Is he liking this flop or is he disliking it, if we just take this nice and simple?
Yeah, I mean, if we're saying that he's capable of level 2, where he's thinking what have they raised it with, he should be very scared of that if he's not connected with it in any way, simply because raggy aces form a massive part of my stealing range. In fact, I'd say raggy aces is probably the strongest part of my stealing range, because you have always got that ace to fall back on. You've got that part of strength. So other than when you're dominated by another ace, you're normally fairly good.
So he's got to worry that we've got all the aces in our range and that aces take up a big part of our range. And although there's 2 of them on the board, it's a very real possibility that we could have one of them. So what about how are we feeling about under the gun's range? As the hero in this position, we've seen under the gun limp and then call our 4 big blind bet, and he's then called that. What do we think about his range here in terms of how it's hit the flop?
I think the strongest part of his range is gone, so I don't think we're seeing a Broadway ace. But that doesn't mean that wouldn't make a blind bit of difference. If he's got ace 9, he's now feeling that he's got his hand wrapped up.
Yeah, if he's got any ace, he's got the effective nuts, isn't he, here?
Yeah, I do feel that this hand is should be quite easy to read. I cannot remember what my action is, but this is a hand where I would float quite a lot because I wouldn't trust. Basically, there's only 2 other aces out there. He might have one of them aces, but I feel that even if I called a flop bet, considering he just called and then called again pre-flop, he's not showing himself to be or themselves to be someone who's naturally very aggressive. So if they suddenly come out with a big bet, I'd probably fold. But anything less than a big bet, I'd probably float it. And then if they check that turn, I'm putting some good chips in, and I'd expect to win that
I
most
like
of the
that.
time.
So you've got a plan for the hand. We're going to float no matter what, unless it's maybe all in, and then play based on his action on the turn. I like that. So all right, what does villain do here? First to act, he checks.
Check a route. Could be a slow play. I'd be aware of a check raise at this point. But
what do we want to do here then? Are we checking this flop?
Yep, and sorry, just saying because it didn't say the action. So despite me thinking I'm going to float, when they've checked it to me, I'm then thinking, could that be that they're looking for a check raise? Now, a big part of my range would be an ace, and is it likely? Yeah. So at this point, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to forget what I would have been thinking. I'm trying to treat this as though I'm approaching the hands fresh. At this point where they've now checked, I would be in a position where a bet in this position might be a poor choice because you're only going to get called by an ace. Yet they might, if you're looking to float and bluff, raising in this position's is a better hand going to fold. I feel like a better hand. There's just more opportunity on the turn, but at the same time, should be representing. If that's what I was saying, I was got at the first point. What's your feelings on this? I'm torn between.
I'm raising all day long here after a limp call from villain, right? We've raised 4 times the big line. We're on the button, and he may be aware that we might be doing that with quite a wide range, and that might include 7-3 of diamonds. But 2 aces have hit, unless he's got one of them, or he's got the 5, or some kind of pocket pair, which is again a possibility. I'm raising this to find out, and even if he calls on the turn, I don't think it's going to make too much difference. You could still bet big. I'd probably bet here around about half pot. See what he does. If he just calls it, then we go really big on the turn. If he calls that or raises that, then he's got the ace. Then you just know for sure. But I feel like the raise here, the purpose of it is that we're taking this pot down, at least half the time. We're going to win it right here.
Yeah, and I am trying to go back and think why wouldn't I have raised this? Because the truth is that it's almost a guarantee that any of his range is better than our holding. So every single time he folds, which is a large percentage, if we feel that they're capable of looking at aces thinking, well, if he's betting, I'm out, and we're getting a better hand to fold, we win the pot. We win 208 there. So I'm not sure what my reasoning was for just checking behind, and I feel that that's at least the first mistake. So we'll use that context to work out what else happens. So we both check. 208 still in the pot. We've still got ace of diamonds, ace of clubs, 5 of hearts, and then the turn is the king of spades. Again, my gut feeling, our range is better than theirs at this. They did call, at which point I'd now start to think that at least an ace or a king is a part of, is starting to form a significant part of their range. Where if they thought we haven't got the ace, they're now in a position where they're considering representing, maybe not the ace, but even the king. So if we haven't got the king either, they might be able to steal this pot. So again, there's one of the reasons why our bet should have been on the flop back then, like you said. What's your feelings on this king? Has it been good for our range? Has it been good for our hand?
Yeah, I think, I don't think what we did on the flop was horrendous. Even if we're representing the ace, we might check behind. It's a rainbow board, so there's no flush draws on. Ace 5. If we'd hit the ace and we're faced with someone checking who just heads up seeing a flop, although I do prefer the raise on the flop, I don't think checking's that bad either, because it could be that we're like, we want him to catch up. And, if you're representing the ace, it could be that we think, great, you might have hit the king, and we now want to bet. So it's definitely time to bet, obviously pending and seeing what he does first.
Yeah, I feel that. Okay.
So he checks.
And this is where we've decided to come alive. So they've checked again. I mean, from my perspective, as far as I'm concerned, if it goes check on the flop and then another check on the turn, another check to you on the turn, you have to bet almost 100% of the time, unless you've got a good reason to believe that the opposition is tricky or really skilled or anything. Check is a raise, just because.
Sure.
What could they? Yeah, unless they're sitting there with an absolute monster. And the truth is, as I always say, if they're sitting there with like a pair of aces, or they've got a pair of kings and they've now hit kings full of aces, just pay them off. It's just one of them times that it's a single hand out of what is quite a large range. Just pay them off. You're never going to be certain that that's what their hand is. There's every chance that they could have been playing a pair of jacks and they're going to fold it quicker than they can throw it from their hands. Anyway, so 104 though. What's your feeling on the bet size?
So we've gone half pot. Yeah, I mean, fine. Absolutely fine. If we're representing the ace still here, this seems like a bet. Considering what happened on the flop. So we've checked the flop. It would be that we're checking it to hope they catch up, and a king's hit. There's got to be a good few kings in there under the gun, limping, then call range. Yep. So yeah, I like the bet. Half pot. Find out what's going on. Let's see what villain does.
Yep. I mean, just from the perspective that because now you've read that back to me and you've said about waiting for him to catch up, that feels right. That feels like something I would do. What I'm interested to kind of just quickly scratch at is if someone is just thinking level 1, they're just thinking whatever's in their range in front of them. Well, they're not thinking of their range. They're just thinking the 2 cards in front of them. Let's just say, for instance, they've got a pair of 10s, okay? And that's the board. Pair of 9s, maybe even something wild, 7-5 suited. And they've seen me check the aces. Now, if they're level 1 thinking, they could say, okay, you didn't bet, you haven't got the ace. Then the king comes, they know they've got a hand, they've got some proportion. The king comes down, I'm betting. So I'm saying, yeah, I've got it, but they've only made it 104. Now, they're maybe not even considering the percentage of the pot. They're thinking, can I afford 104 with my pair of 10s or with my 7-5 or something like that? Yes, let's see if I improve. Now, we know that's mathematically a mistake. We know that that's not good play, but if they are very learning poker, should we call it, level 1 playing, at this stake, I do see quite a lot of players that appear to be playing because it's affordable, not because it's mathematically correct. They won't appreciate pot odds. They'll appreciate, well, I've got 2,000, it's only 100. Just let's call away and see what happens.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, let's see what goes on. So 104 is my raise, half pot, and it is called. Okay, so far it's extremely passive from the villain. Pre-flop, they
So what is he calling with here? I mean, he's calling if he's got an ace and he's just decided to slow roll it. He's calling if he has got a 5. You know, he's checked the 5, thinking, oh, you might have the ace. He's checked the 5. If he's got the king, is he calling that, thinking, well, I've got the king. He might have the ace, he might not. I don't want to make a massive pot in case he's got the ace. To me, he could have any piece of this board, but this call says to me he has got a piece of this board. He's got an ace, a 5, or a king. Or, actually, sorry, he's potentially still got a pocket pair. I think hands like pocket 3s, pocket 4s are checking this flop and then calling this turn bet as well.
Yep. I might just add in, and it is just wild, but I might add in 3-4 suited.
Oh yeah, sure. So for a gut shot straight, yeah.
I think, I mean, as much as we look at that thinking that's inexplicable, when someone's played this passively and it's a low stakes game, they've done nothing else to show me that they've got tricky play. So say they did have the ace already and they're really slow playing me into a bluff. I just don't think not saying they're not capable of it, but I would never assume they're capable of it until I've seen it at $3 level.
Yeah, 3-4 suited maybe. Like I'm just thinking like the pre-flop action, so he's limped and then called 3-4 suited. He might really like the hand. Even 2-3 suited, 2-4 suited, possibly likes the look of it. We've all got big stacks. Let's just have a bit of fun. Let's get some chips in. So yeah, I like that. It could be a gut shot, couldn't it? One of the gut shots.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll say, and I don't think I'll ever say this again, is we do have a blocker to their 3-4 suited. So yeah, sure. maybe 4-2 or something even more crazy. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what goes on. But it's been really passive, so it makes it a bit harder to read. But you obviously, I've never put them on a monster at this point, which might explain why I've saved this hand, because I genuinely have no memory of what happened in this hand. I would just knowing how I play online, be ready for an outrageous bluff. That's where I feel.
Yeah, I'm getting to this river. I mean, we're not hitting anything that's going to put us anywhere. So it's going to be either we decide to give up or let's get the chips in. Okay, so he's called then. So we've raised half pot. He's called the pots. The pot size is now 416 as we go to the river. We're sitting on 1800. He's sitting on about 1600 chips.
Oh. And we get a 5 of diamonds. So we've got 2 aces, 2 5s to the board, and a king. And from all intent and purposes, the board's rainbow.
Yeah, there's no flush. There's no possible flush. Okay, so the gut shot straight didn't come in. If you're now sitting on that pair of 2s, pair of 3s, pair of 4s, you're now counterfeit. So anyone with there's a king on the board. So basically, you're going to be chopping the pot unless you've got a 5, a king, or an ace. So has he got a 5, a king, or an ace? Because all of those beat us. Do any of them fold to a bet? He's either missed his straight, or he has got a 5, a king, or an ace. All 3 of those, I think he's calling a substantial bet. So what are your thoughts there?
I agree that in this position, given that I don't put him on a monster, I think we're chopping a lot. If it's checked, I think chop is probably the most likely outcome. I feel that he wouldn't be checking a king, an ace at 5 or a king. So if he checks to us, I'd certainly think there's a lot of value in getting a better hand to fold, because we're playing the ball. So he's folding. If he's folding the split, his share of the split, that's a good profit for us. So if he's got absolutely nothing as well, great, because we're picking up more than we deserve. It could be that they are that type of tricky player where they feel that everything is a check raise, everything's a slow play, and I wouldn't berate them for that as much as I call them tricky players. That's because I always get done by them.
Because they trick you. Yeah, because they trick you.
Yeah, they trick me.
It's annoying.
Yeah. It could be that. I'm not sure what to make of it. If he suddenly comes to life, it puts us on a really difficult decision. But at the same time, if we get checked to, I'm paying them off if they have slow played the entire thing, because I feel there's a lot of good equity to be had from folds. Considering, 9 times out of 10, I feel that we're splitting the pot. Do you want to see what the action is? You got any more feelings on their range?
I'll tell you what, let's see what he does here, and then I'll recap on the action so far.
So I believe that was a check.
So he's checked. Okay, so the action so far then. So we've got the villain's under the gun. Pre-flop, he just limps in for the 20 big blind. It folds round to us on the button, holding the 7 of diamonds, 3 of diamonds. We raise to 4 times the big blind, so a bet of 80. We get 2 folds from the blinds, and then the under the gun limper calls our bet. The flop comes ace, ace, 5, rainbow. Under the gun, villain checks. We check. Then the turn comes the king of spades. Under the gun, villain checks. We bet half pot. Villain calls. And then the river comes 5 of diamonds for a final board of ace of diamonds, ace of clubs, 5 of hearts, king of spades, 5 of diamonds. So no possible flush. And the villain checks.
Yep.
What do we do? I mean, what are we doing? Are we checking this down and just hoping for a chop, or not worrying too much if he's got a part of it and he's just not got any value on the end there? And do we want to deny him his equity by not raising? Is he kind of expecting a raise? We've been raising all the way along. Is he expecting this check on the river to get a raise from us, and we can deny equity by just not playing ball? It feels to me like a bluff. It feels to me like it's time to bluff. Let's get some chips in the pot. Let's go 150%, 600 chips, bomb. We've got the ace. We've been saying it all along. We've still got that ace. We've now got a full house. If we make that type of bet, what hands will fold? Well, the straights will fold. Like the gut shot straights that didn't hit, they fold. Obviously, an ace wouldn't fold. A 5, I don't think, would fold. And the only one that might struggle is a king. The king was willing to call a half pot bet on the turn. If a pair of kings was there, he might be thinking we've not got any of it. Would the pairs of 4s, maybe pairs of 6s, pairs of 7s, all the pairs that he might have had to this point that have called along, would they call a massive 1.5 pot bet?
Yeah,
that is a tricky one. I mean, anything under the 5 is counterfeit, so they wouldn't. Pairs of 6s upwards, they might be thinking we've got nothing.
I do see the value in what you're saying with the massive bet. How much of that could we achieve out of that range that you've spoken through? As you're talking through, the missed straights, the middling pairs where you're now worried that the 5 has made trips, that I've got a house of some nature, or I might have a pocket pair myself that's above their pocket pair. How much of that range is folding to a quarter pot?
It's a good question. I mean, a quarter pot, I think anyone with anything is going to call. Like at least, I don't think anyone's come here to fold a pair of 9s on that board.
But
with the
then,
action so far to just 100 chips, like they'll probably chuck that in. But you'll definitely get a fold from the missed straights, for instance, and you definitely get a fold from the counterfeited pocket deuces, pocket threes, pocket fours.
right. I
So
mean,
yeah, like you're right. Maybe that's the better bet, because practically everything else is calling definitely a quarter pot bet, but practically everything else is probably going to call you 600 bet anyway, unless we jam. Just get all your chips in. We've got the ace. We've just hit a full house. Aces full of fives. Jam. If we jammed here, I feel like the only call we're going to get is from an ace and maybe a five. If he's got an ace in the hole or a five in the hole for a full house. I think even if he's holding a five for fives full of aces, I think he would struggle to call an all-in bet. We've got him covered. He'd be out in last place. We've played it so far like we've got an ace. Maybe the flop's a bit questionable, and he might kind of read that for weakness and think, no, we can't have an ace. But he also might just think, yeah, he's just waiting for me to catch up.
yeah.
Five on the river, I have caught up, but it's tricky.
Do you feel there's a lot more kings in his range? Do you feel that there's a king jack in there, a king queen in there? I don't know why they would have called. Let's check on the flop. Yeah, and I feel it. Do you know what? I might even be talking myself into some kind of raggy king.
Yeah, he could have a king. This is what I'm saying. He could have a king, but the only way to win this hand if he's got a king is to play and continue the story of we checked the flop because we were so strong with trip aces. We wanted him to catch up. The king comes. We asked the question with a half pot bet. He answered it. Yes, I've got a king. I'll call your half pot bet. The five comes. We've now got a full house. Aces full of fives versus his, king with a queen kicker or whatever. Jam. Bum. He's caught up. Let's try and get all his chips. But would an ace? Would a full house, aces full of fives, put all of his chips in? We'd probably be scared of losing him. We'd probably want to bet like pot and a half. I'm sticking with my pot and a half. That's my take on this. Pot and a half bet, 600 chips, chuck them in. If it loses, you've still got 1,200 left. You can catch up. The blinds are tiny.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm hesitating over is that if the opponent has decided, going back to what I was saying about level one thinking, they've literally looked at their cards, looked at the bet, and said, "You check that flop, you haven't got an ace." I feel their calling range, even to a jam, is quite wide, to the point that where we've got nothing, we are literally playing the board. I feel that 150 times
if we had any of this,
the flop, yeah.
If we had any of it, yeah, like I wouldn't be bluffing, but you got to bluff with the worst part of your range, and this is about as low as it gets. I mean, we have got 7-3 of diamonds on a board that doesn't connect with that at all.
But it's more that we're the entire bluff that we're trying to maneuver is based on the interpretation that we're representing an ace, and against a level one player who's decided we haven't, there's no that's it. There's no level two, level three thinking where they reevaluate their hand based on further action or anything like that. They're now thinking, well, you're now trying to shove an ace. I've decided you haven't got it anyway. Or even if they have, it's like, oh, I love my king. I love that I've got king, queen, it hit. I'm willing to take a risk
for
$3.
Would someone at this stakes though, maybe on the flop when you check, go, he hasn't got an ace? Would that type of player not refine your range by the river, but just completely change because he's not ranging you? Would it get to the river and go, oh shit, he's bet massive now? Maybe he has got that ace.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of players at this stake level that are capable of deciding something but not sticking with that. And by the river, always bets massive. Looking back, yeah, there's them aces there. He could have one of those.
Yeah, no, you are 100% right. But is that enough for him to, or them to throw away a mediocre hand?
Yeah, maybe not 5, but I think we could get him to fold the king. I think a pot and a half bet, that might target a fold from the king.
Yeah. See,
But
it seems
very risky. It seems risky. It probably is best to just check and hope for a chop. Is probably the optimal play here. Like, we're trying to get really strong hands to fold. In fact, it's only the king and maybe some of the pairs that will, the pocket pairs that will fold to a pot and a half bet.
Yeah.
So it's only those.
Just rolling back the action quickly then, like, if we consider the turn bet a probe, even though we're representing an ace, we're waiting for him to catch up. If we class that as a probe bet, half pot, and got called, what information did we gain that we're now ignoring with a bet? Does that make sense? Like, we put out a half pot bet, which is a fairly, it's big enough that someone shouldn't be calling that with nothing. I mean, with just the turn, with just the river to come, they shouldn't be calling that with a lot of their draws, although there's very few out there. So we've got information that they've got better than a draw. If they're playing ABC, they've got better than a draw. There's not much out there that is better than a draw. So we are talking what you said. Pocket pairs.
On the turn, he could be drawing. Yeah, I think a half pot bet for 100 chips, this stake level, they could call that turn with 3-4. 2-4, 2-3.
It's not matter of what they could call. It's that if we consider our bet a probe bet, what information have we been given? Like the whole. I'm not saying necessarily was that probe bet the right size, because evidently it wasn't. If they've called it.
To answer your question, I suppose all we know by them calling the turn is that they haven't got complete air. They've got either a draw or they've hit an ace, king, or a 5.
Listen, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is, if we feel that half pot bet in this situation against this player is enough to achieve a fold from complete air or from moderate hands, as a pro bet would be, find out where we're at. When they have called that, as much as they could call it, I mean, they could call it with like 7 deuce off. But the truth is, if we're suggesting, if we did that bet on the turn for information, we need to be listening to the information that we were given, that they've got some part of it. Now, I think what you're saying is that the bet was nowhere near big enough to get the information we need, and I agree. I feel that didn't define his range anywhere near enough.
I don't know. I think it's okay. I actually feel like even if you'd done a pot size bet, the draws, the gut shot draws, they could be coming along. I feel like they really could. I still feel like the half pot, or if it was a pot bet or a quarter pot, if they're holding an ace, a 5, a king, or a pocket pair, they'd just call that. But the draws as well, like the 2-3, 3-4, and 2-4.
Right. I agree, but I'm also not too sure. I'm just trying to think.
Yeah, let me understand it from your point of view then. So what are you hoping to find out? Like, if you say you bet them like a pot size bet and they called that, what do you think they're coming along with now? What do you think it excludes?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of. If we go back to them playing ABC poker, if we assume they're playing how they're meant to play, we should be eliminating their draws. We should be eliminating the small pocket pairs. We should probably be eliminating their mid-pocket pairs as well. Pair of aces and a king out there, and we were the pre-flop aggressor. So I know that we can assume that their range is much bigger than this. If they were an ABC standard player who knows when to fold, who knows when to call, who knows what pot odds are to some degree, but with no real skill behind it, they're only playing in this position with a good hand, especially now that the five's paired. And I would say, if we had knowledge that they were an ABC solid player, they're calling 100% of our raises. Now, what we then need to deliberate is exactly what we have been, where we're quite, even just given their action, the chances of them being an ABC solid player is limited. The passive check call check calls just feels pretty passive. There's too much going on. Open calling under the gun, for instance, and then calling a button raise is pretty passive. It's even with aces, I'm not sure that's the right move. Anyway, it's just trying to run back through thinking, okay, this is what I would assume the best solid players, not someone who's tricky, not someone who's thinking level 2 overly, but they know exactly how to play good. I'm looking at my cards, fit and fold poker. So then when we take it beyond that, we kind of need a bit of information as to why. And then we can evaluate how likely that is and how much of their range is now fitting into the extremities. Does that make sense? So for us to be saying he would be...
Expand on that a little bit, sorry.
So, right. So if let's just assume I was right in that a solid ABC player would see that kind of flop where you've got ace 5 and then a king on the turn, wouldn't call that half pot bet with a draw, and they wouldn't call it with a small pair or a medium pair, because we're the aggressor. They know that we've always been the aggressor. The cards we're likely to have, well, they know that a pair of sevens against an ace king board is not going to be in good shape. So, and it's a half-size pot. They appreciate that it's a half-size pot. If we said that they're playing just level 1 poker, but they're playing it perfectly, they're folding anything that they're folding all of their range that's not half decent. So any bet at the end here would always get a fold, would always be called. But the chances of them being an ABC player are not good. So for us to then say he will have folds in him, we need to work out exactly where the extremities of his range are that fits outside the ABC. And then we kind of need to justify why we've done that. So if, for instance, we're saying he's going to be calling with 2-3 off, why would a person with 2-3 off call under the gun and then call a raise from the button? So we're then assuming that they're not positionally aware, they're not aggressive, they're not aware of us representing the king. They're not even properly playing fit and folds. They're just falling in love with hand and seeing if it improves, which isn't a bad assumption. It's more, that's the kind of, when I'm thinking through a hand and I'm assuming that someone's worse than ABC, I need to kind of work out why I think they're worse, rather than just saying, yeah, he might have 3-4. Why would someone in that position who is a bad player call and have this action with 3-4? Why? At what level have they ignored or not understood elements of poker to get them to the flop, to get them to the river, sorry, with 3-4 or with a pair of sevens? Do you see what I mean?
Well, yeah. To answer your question, I think that, okay, so firstly, limping under the gun and then calling a raise isn't terrible, but it does kind of show maybe a little bit of weakness. Like, if you're going to limp under the gun, you should do it maybe with really, really strong hands for a bit of balance. Yeah, it's tricky. I can't answer it. It's just that I think that a lot of players are kind of would have a hand like 3-4 and think, oh yeah, I want to link with that because it's a suited connector, it's okay. And then the flop comes down, they think, oh, I've got a gut shot. I want to try and get to the river and see if I complete my straight. Yep, great, I get a free check on the flop. Oh, I've got to put in 100. Not that he's not even thinking it's half pot. I've got to put in 100 on the turn. I just want to see. So that's my thinking.
Just had a quick thought, and as soon as it sparked in my mind, I thought we haven't mentioned Queen 10, and all of a sudden, a lot of the action makes a lot more sense. That is a real good check call hand. Some people like the Queen; they see it as a slight connecting. It's only one. What is it? A one spacer. The ace comes and they're like, oh yeah, not having a part. But then we only checked. Then the king comes, and all of a sudden it's exactly what you said, but it's a stronger hand. Now it makes more sense that A, they're involved in the first place, and B, they're like, oh, I could hit Broadway here, That feels a lot better to me. Someone chasing that straight, not the bottom straight, but the Queen 10. Yeah.
They got a chance to hit us. Yeah. So I see. So on the turn, they've suddenly got the gut shot, and I'll chuck 100 in to see if I hit a big straight at the end. Especially if he's thinking we have got an ace. This actually could be a really great play from someone with Queen 10 thinking, well, I've definitely not got the odds to be calling this, but the implied odds are massive because if he's got an ace here, oh no, hang on, because because if he's got an ace here, he's got trip aces. At this point, he's on the turn, he doesn't know that it's going to turn into a full house, but he might be thinking, like I've not got the odds, but if I do hit my straight, I'm going to bust this guy for all his chips because all he's got is trip aces.
Yeah, and it makes this bet at the end that you've been talking through a lot more valuable, like a lot more valuable. Yeah.
I mean, in a way though, like it doesn't have to. Again, though, if he has got that hand, that's another one that would just fold to half a pot bet, or it's another one that would just fold. Like all we're really trying to, with such a big pot and a half bet on the river, all we're really trying to do is get a king to fold. I actually changed my mind after talking this through with you, Tain. I think we just check this and just hope for the chop. I don't think there's a lot of hands that are better that will fold. Basically, I think most hands that are worse, we're going to be chopping with them anyway. There might be like pair of sixes, pair of sevens that you get to fold.
But I think there's a lot to be said because it is a chop that we'd be playing towards against quite a big part of their range. I feel that there is actually hidden value in a bet because your fallback might be the chop anyway, whereas when it's black and white, you're either winning with the bluff or you lose. You've actually got a lot more there's a lot more at stake. So if I thought that the options were raise and they might fold some of their weaker hands, but raise, and if they call, you're chopping with a massive percentage of their hands as well, then that's definitely a raise. Considering that at this stage we feel the likelihood of them having an ace or a 5 with such passive action is really small, and I would say that that's the case. Like, I think it's rare to see someone this passive who's got a full house. Especially as it's too risky, especially at these low stakes. Check raising someone with a house is just, I don't know how tricky you feel that you're going to be, but I just don't see it. I would assume they've not got an ace or a 5. So we are still looking at the king, possibly, but every other hand, I feel that a raise might get it to fold. A lot of it could be falling back to the same. They've worked out you've not got a hand either. We're going to chop this. I just feel like it adds a bit more value. Like there is a big percentage of hands that you're actually not losing 100% of your equity. Like our little decision tree isn't two prongs. We've got this little third prong that adds a lot of value into a little, 100 chip raise. Only a third of the pot. It's nothing. We're not really risking much. If they call it, we're probably chopping. But there are some king hands that we're losing to. There's a big percentage of their range that's going to look at that and think, oh, they're trying to get value. I've got to fold here. And I think it's only a small percent that are going to re-raise us in that position. I think the risk reward of 100 bet is, I think there's a good value in that, and it is because of that.
100, like a quarter pot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. We need to be betting small, maybe half pot up to half pot, just to make sure he doesn't call for the chop. Yeah. Okay.
But that's what I'm saying. Even if we did just a quarter pot, and he might just call for the chop. Is that like that's it's a kind of, we can't lose in that position. Does that make sense? So that's still right. A good bet.
That's exactly. We're not going to really. There's not really any big bet sizing that's going to get any particularly strong hands to fold. We're probably going to chop it. Let's chuck some chips in and see if we can take the lot. At worst, we're probably still just going to chop anyway. So it's kind of like a free stab at winning the pot.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said by we've come to the river with probably the worst possible hand.
Yeah.
Like, there is nothing that is worse than us. So, I mean, obviously we're playing the board, but we're at the position where it doesn't matter what they've got. Everything is better than us. So, in theory, everything is value. Any fold that we get out of them is worthwhile. Which is not a good reason to bet, because you shouldn't really be in a position where you're playing the board because your hand's that bad. But
that's what the professionals do, Tain. I've seen them do it. This is exactly what the professionals do. So exactly we're on the right track.
This is a pro line. All right, do you want to see what happens?
Yeah, let's do it. What do we do? So he's checked.
He's checked. I think I've checked behind.
You checked behind. Okay.
You want to do a drum roll?
It's got to be a chop. Check. All right, let's see. Oh, pair of eights he had. So he actually wins. Oh my God, we could have got him to fold those maybe. Damn. Maybe the pot and a half would have bloody worked. But I just feel like there were too many other hands in his range that weren't sixes, sevens, eights, nines. Like tens would have re-raised under our bet. They'd have probably re-raised, or maybe not. I think there were more hands there that weren't these pairs that actually now win the blooming pot.
I was really confident of that Queen 10. When I thought of that Queen 10, I thought, this feels good. This feels like everything. Their action now makes sense. Beforehand, it felt just passive rubbish.
Yeah, I like it. Queen 10 or Queen Jack, obviously.
Do you want to have a quick run back just to see what their action's like? So down to the flop, they've got a pair of eights. Aces are out there. They're definitely going to check it to us. I'd say you're going to have some. Well, I don't know. I like an out of position raise when the board pairs. I mean, it's texture and player dependent, but I actually quite like betting out in that position because there's two of the aces there. Means there's one less card that they could have if they have got an ace. There's one less chance of them having an ace. Especially when they've been the aggressor, you're now saying, I've got a bet because I'm out of position. But anyway, pair of eights, they're going to check. We checked. King comes. Now, this is the bit that I think probably threw the entire hands awry. So, king's down. It's still rainbow, but there's two aces and a king.
Yeah. It's it's another scare card for this guy, isn't it?
And they've checked. Now, we see that as a quarter pot, and I think we are right to assume that they actually just see it as 100. But
a half pot, mate.
Half pot. What are they hoping to achieve with just a call with their eights?
I think they're just trying to see a showdown as cheaply as possible. I don't think that's a bad call. I think that's fine. I would do something like that. Just he checked the flop. He's maybe saying he's got the king now, but He might have. I'm going to call it. I've got showdown value. Let's see.
Right. I mean, yeah, let's just get past, because I was going to say, what's our range in this position? How much of our range is beaten? But the truth is that they're not thinking on that level, so it's irrelevant, really. They're looking at their ace. I think eights, and as you said, they're trying to see a showdown. The 5 comes. Any bet in this position, I feel could have worked. I reckon 100 bet. No, you're right. If they're calling 100 on the turn,
Yeah.
I don't think they care about that 5. If they feel they've got showdown value, they're not folding at that point. But they are to a good bet, but you'd need to be confident of their hand.
If we look at this entirely from the villain's perspective, we've shown a fair bit of weakness. Like we've checked the flop, and then we've done a half bet on the turn. Like we're not showing any massive strength here. Like I think if we'd have gone gun ho on the flop and then massive on the turn, we could have got him to fold his 8s. But from his perspective, we're playing quite, we're going to check the flop, little 100 bet on the turn. And I know that's half pot, but I honestly feel like all these players are just thinking, it's 100, he's bet 100. He's probably thinking, yeah, mate, could well be good here. He's not really showing much strength.
You know what's, as you're talking it through, do you know what's made me really angry about my play?
What's that?
Is exactly what you said. They're looking at it thinking, yeah, you're not playing it very strong. You're a bit passive. But there'll be a little tickle in anyone's mind who's even remotely decent, is you might also be playing the aces. You're trying to get value. You're playing it slow. I don't mind the 100 bet just in case, but any other more aggression from you, and I'll start to be sure that you've got the ace, and you was
sure.
just, and I've done nothing to support that.
No, exactly. You wanted to tell a story, right? If that flop comes up, you've got to be saying, I've got the ace. I raised pre-flop. I've got that ace, and you need to tell that story really, really well all the way through to convince the other player that story is true.
Yeah, it literally is like the aces have come on the flop, and I've gone, oh well, I don't want to scare you off just yet. The king comes, I'm like, do you want to call this little bit? And then that's it. That's as much of the story as I was willing to tell. That half pot, I was putting all my hopes in them, looking at that half pot, thinking, wow, only the ace or the king's going to call that, going to make that move. And that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
I've missed that completely. Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes there, but I love it. I love that we've picked that apart.
A lot of learnings from that one. That was a great hand.
Yeah, I'll come back having learnt nothing in about 6 weeks with a very similar hand, I'm sure. Asking how they got to the river with aces, 8s again.
Keep going, Tain. This type of hand analysis is where we're going to learn. This is great.
Perfect. All right, well, I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tain.
We rightfully lost our hands. Good that we got there. Nice one.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you're listening in, well, obviously you are. If I'm talking to you and you're hearing me say thanks for listening. Until next time, take care.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening.